Markus Reichel is member of the Bundestag in Germany. Welcome, Markus. Adam Guibourgé-Czetwertyński. Almost close, very, very close. He's the former Undersecretary of State for Climate and Environment here in Poland, and it's fantastic to have them both. Gentlemen, just before we kick off, I'd love to ask you to give us your assessment of the success achieved so far by Europe post-invasion of Ukraine in terms of managing the route to decarbonization while at the same time supplying the energy that is needed today.
Well, I think one of the first great success that one of the things that we managed to do in Europe and what we showed during this energy crisis in the context of the war is that we were actually pretty good at reacting quite fast to the changing situation. Usually discussions are known in Europe to be very lengthy, very thorough, but we were actually able in a matter of a few weeks, a couple of months, to implement very significant legislation in terms of, for instance, gas storage that enabled us in Europe to go through a safe winter. We were able to coordinate also at European level to provide help and support to Ukraine, and Poland did a lot to do that, providing help directly, but also acting as a logistical hub for that help to be given to Ukraine. And we were able to coordinate also on sanctions. I think we still can do more on all of these fronts, but I think overall, compared to what we imagine very often, the European machinery as being very inefficient and cumbersome, we've shown that that in these times of crisis we were able to work together quite well. And I think the only thing we can hope for is that we can show more of that combative spirit in future years, and also in normal times and on normal files.
So maintaining that level of dexterity.
Well, I think first 3 years ago, nobody would have thought that the EU will be able to react that way and that it will keep together, and we did so. Our internal market proved, all in all, well, and our institutions proved themselves. So I think this was a good experience for us as Europeans, but of course now we need to adapt to a totally different global outlook, and here we have to become faster, as you say, not only during an imminent crisis, but also in normal crisis days. Let's say it like that.
How do you do that during a period of high inflation and higher energy prices? How difficult is that? Because you're not only having to attempt to stay on path to decarbonize, but at the same time convince your citizens that taking home a bigger energy bill is in their better interest.
Well, in the short term, I think it was possible to convince at least the citizens that the government is able to level out the most important price hikes. I think we forgot a little bit about the businesses, and they had the real problems.
Certainly in Germany. Certainly in Germany.
Definitely, but all over Europe due to our internal connected energy market.
Yes, I think overall one of the things what we could observe during this crisis is that markets can regulate a lot of things naturally, but it's also difficult for some players, in particular households, in particular SMEs, to, for instance, fully hedge themselves against volatility on electricity prices. Even if some instruments are available, are they really available for everyone? And thinking about these consequences, the social impact of the policies that we implement is critical for their success. Because if not, these policies, rather than fueling emission reduction, will actually fuel populism and not real reductions.
And we're seeing that in some countries already in Europe.
Yes, of course, but this shows that governments must understand the laws of market economies. Yeah? And during the crisis, I think the laws of market economies were a little bit neglected because if there is no supply and governments say we will buy, for example, gas at any price, well, then the price will go to any price, in fact. And this is what we saw. I think what we definitely also for these, let's say, normal days now, we must reconsider what does market economy mean for us in climate protection, energy supply, and so on.
In the new normal, is there a single market for energy, in your mind, for Europe?
Not yet. Not yet. I mean, we write it in this report. In order to create it, we need more than just an energy exchange, but we also need interconnections and so on. So there's still quite a lot to do.
Yeah. In your mind, it's a tough one because there is a lot to do, and it looks as if, unfortunately, this is a conflict that is going to continue. And earlier today, we heard from various ministers of energy about the need, obviously, to cut off the last remaining countries who are using Russian gas, to make sure that that comes to an end as quickly as possible, but also as painlessly as possible. And we know that the pain is going to be there either way. In moving to a single market, what is the greatest challenge in your mind to making that a reality?
Well, I think in terms of the functioning of the market, beyond the energy security question and the energy supply, we have huge challenges around the pricing of energy, not only to provide our economy, our citizens with affordable and predictable energy, but also to make sure that we have the right incentives built in the system so that we see the investments that are necessary. Because we see a lot of investments in energy generation, but we also need zero-emission solutions to balance, for instance, renewables. We need to see more investments in grids and in energy storage in Europe. And I don't see that we have today, in the way the market functions, that we have the proper incentives for private companies to take on those investments, or at least we don't see those investments in the volumes that we would need for a properly functioning energy system that is fully decarbonized. And part of the answer to that, I believe, is in providing adequate financial remuneration for some of the services that are provided by these sources.
Yeah. What is Germany doing specifically? Because Germany hitherto has been the engine of European growth. When I spoke with Olaf Scholz in February of this year, I pushed him on the economy. He tried to tell me it was doing great, and of course we all know it isn't. What is the next step in your mind? Because obviously people look to Germany and Europe for many reasons, not the least of which to be a leader in this.
Well, Olaf Scholz also tells us that he is doing well, and I'm not delusional? Yet. I'm not convinced yet. But one thing is for sure, because you asked what are the problems, why don't we realize specific solutions? I mean, it's always a question, do we want to lose control on the national level? I mean, we talk about the advantages of European Union. Yeah, there should be a defense union, there should be an energy union. Yes, that's clear. But now, are we ready to lose control on the national level? One thing. And the other thing is, of course, we need to communicate our energy and also climate protection policies to each other. We also highlighted this in this report. They have to be aligned or realigned. Otherwise, if Germany does one thing, France does the other, and Poland the next thing within the Weimar Triangle, then there are no synergies. And Germany at least should start again to communicate more with its neighbors in order to realign policies.
Yeah. Is it inevitable in your mind that Germany returns at some stage to nuclear energy in some form?
I think it is not probable at the moment. My political option says we want to have this technological openness to do so, but I think the society is not yet ready for it. But what I think we definitely must do is to get back to clear market economy rules in the main parts of the energy economy, and technological openness then will maybe open the discussion also for nuclear energy again.
I think that is clearly the Germany's decision what to do with their energy mix, as is every country's in Europe decision on what energy to invest. But I think it's important, as Markus was saying, that we will still discuss what our plans to transform our energy systems are, so that we coordinate, because we don't function in a vacuum. We actually are more and more integrated, and this is necessary for the good functioning of the system, to make sure that even if each of us are implementing these policies and choosing our own mix, that the goals are aligned, and that we know that everything will work together. And I personally believe that if we look on a large scale of the continent, for just the stability of the grid, we will need to have large zero-emission energy sources in different places in the continent. It doesn't mean that they have to be in every country. And today there is no really other option than nuclear to produce large quantities of decarbonized energy. And I think if we all accept that, and we are lucky that there are countries in Europe that want to invest in nuclear, then we can have a good functioning of the system. But that doesn't mean that every country has to do it, and every country can still continue to choose. But we, I think, need to agree at European level that yes, it will actually be good for all of us in Europe if some of us invest in nuclear.
The politics versus pragmatism aspect of all of this, and I think that's what you're trying to reference there. It's difficult for a lot of people to get their heads around this in the current environment, that investing in nuclear is probably the only way forward when you're talking about industrial capacity, and having enough energy to fund industry, which then funds jobs and then keeps economies moving. In Germany, it's very difficult, as you say, but you're not ruling out the possibility completely. You just need a change of party?
Well, no. But you mentioned pragmatism. Yeah? And I think this is now, in our economic crisis now, the word to go. Because as Europe, I mean, we have 7% of CO2 emissions. This is significant, but we will not solve the problem alone. We are only 15% of global GDP. So we should say goodbye to all those ideologies, but we want to teach the world a lesson. We should prove that it works. Yeah? And prove that we are able to provide energy without emission at a low price to our businesses and to our people. And I think this is what we should concentrate on. We have all the means at disposal, but we are much, much too bureaucratic in the European Union and in Germany anyway. Yeah. So this is the way to go, I think.
And all of this, of course, requires a massive amount of investment. And it's something that we've seen the United States doing last year, the Biden administration's IRA, laying the groundwork essentially for that path to decarbonization. The European Union's tried to do something similar. Where are we in that journey?
Well, I think that we've seen in the recent weeks, for instance, with the Draghi report, that the EU has now realized that it was not enough just to set objectives in terms of emission reduction to drive economic activity in Europe. And that actually there is quite a real risk that the main beneficiaries of our climate policy will not be European companies and European industries and European workers, but actually Chinese or maybe American in some areas. And that definitely we need to do more at European level to ensure the competitiveness of our industry. part of this is what Markus was mentioning about the energy system, and it's providing our industry with predictable and affordable electricity for our industry to remain competitive. It's also about competition rules. It's also about the way we design our policies in Europe. But one thing I want also to underline, obviously, from a Polish perspective in this discussion, it's important that we also keep in mind in these discussions that these the choices we will make to reinforce the competitiveness of our industry do actually benefit industries across Europe, so as to continue to drive growth in different regions and to ensure a better cohesion of the European society.
Well, where are we? This year we in fact lost our solar industry to the US to a main extent. And this, even though there is a strategy, a European strategy, that we want to rebuild our solar industry again. And we did it due to the IRA on the one hand and to our coasts in Germany and Europe on the other hand. And when I talked to business leaders in this industry, they said, well, yes, of course we could apply for subsidies from the European Union, but we have to prove first, for example, by proving that we talked to somebody, that we proved other locations in the US, and to explain what is the cost difference between there and here. So this would mean, I have my own enterprise, and this would mean I would tell to my client, please, just to show you how good I am, here you have 2 other offers, get them. I send them to my, competition. And this is exactly what we did in a very bureaucratic way. So we must become pragmatic and say it must be easy. I think get back, for example, to tax credits and so on and so on. There's a lot to do to make it easier. We are not the best anymore, and we are not. We have to become the best again, and we will only be able to do so if we become pragmatic again.
What about leadership? And I'm not talking just at the state level, I'm talking about the European level. Are the right people in charge to make this happen? Because as you say, this is about understanding the confluence of several different things. Obviously, industry, jobs, economy, versus being a politician. I mean, do you feel that people there are able to action what we're talking about? The people in Brussels?
I think there is a lot of expertise in the European Commission, and the Commission has shown on many files that it was able to deeply analyze and really prepare well thought through policies. However, if I had to make one caveat, I would say that very often it's you have to really bring in those discussions different perspectives, because the challenges that we face in different regions in Europe are going to be different. For instance, if I look at in our area of climate and energy policy, a huge challenge that we have in Poland will be decarbonization of heating of individual households. Because individual households in Europe consume 85% of the coal that is consumed by households in Europe. So basically, nobody else but these households in Poland are using coal. And these are very often the poorest households. So there is also a social problem beyond that. But if you don't take that perspective into account, you risk designing policies that are actually going to create huge social costs in Poland. And I fear that this is a bit what has happened with the ETS2 in Poland. That's why I hope that before the ETS2 actually enters into force, because it's not entered into force yet, we have a chance, say a second chance, to redesign it to better address those social impacts.
Yeah.
I could enter into a blame game, but I don't, even though I'm a member of an opposition party. But I would like to say that the leaders have the hell of a job to do at the moment. We are open societies in the EU, and we are, I would say, under attack. Yeah, that's for clear. And so it is very hard to find a consensus how to proceed. And I think the job to do is to convince ourselves as societies that the times are very serious. And so let's reconsider what made us strong once. And then maybe also our leaders will get, let's say, have the power again to also realize these things. I think this is all interconnected, and of course it's clear that, I mean, I saw it in Eastern Germany during the elections now that we had, that there's a strong force also of external narratives and propaganda, I would say, and we have to fight this as open societies. And so let's not blame the leaders at that moment, but be ready for these discussions internally.
Just speaking about that, in terms of there's leadership at home, there's looking at things internally, and then there's the external as well. And I wanted to get your assessment on this. In the early days of the invasion, obviously, Europe was looking for external sources of gas. They were looking for anything but Russia, and they looked to Qatar, they looked to the United States. In the United States, this has been used as an election issue as well. You know, you look at Europe, we've saved the day in Europe. We did it at perhaps extortionate prices, but we did it. The alternative view, certainly alternative, I was in Moscow a few weeks ago and spoke with the Alexander Novak, the former energy minister, and who is now a deputy prime minister, and he essentially accused all of the Americans of war profiteering. They said, look at how much money they've made off of Europe. In your mind, is there some accuracy to that assessment? Because certainly for gas companies in the United States, Europe is a great market, but they're doing it on their own terms. How do you shift that?
From a European perspective, gas prices have been higher in Europe than they are in the US. And usually when European companies are buying from the US, from their perspective, it's cheap because the gas is cheaper in the US. So they're actually making a good deal when buying gas. And that's the reason why they are buying this gas. But I think what is important in these efforts around the war in Ukraine is to continue to work together in the West to support Ukraine, both with the direct help, military and equipment that we provide, and also with the sanctions that we coordinate between ourselves. And this is something that, you know, I think as I said earlier in the discussion, we still could do more, but overall, I think we've been doing quite well in coordination between Europe and the US on this question.
I think there's quite some truth in that, of course, but we say if you point at somebody and say it's your fault, there always some fingers point back at me. Yeah? So this is the same here. It is our job as Europeans to make our systems resilient and to be prepared for that. Yeah? So of course the US had some profit out of that. They also helped a lot in the Ukraine, so I don't know what the balance of all this is. It does not matter. It is our job to make our energy system resilient, and not the US or Russia. Also, it's our job. And so we learned a lot, I hope, from these last 3 years.
Excellencies, it's great to have you here at the World Security Forum. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.